We're going to get started here in a second. Don't worry, we're still getting all the tech stuff set up. So really appreciate everybody joining us this morning. For the in-person audience, just kind of curious, a show of hands, how many of you have been to a talk with the Weather Service? So we got, what talk was it? Do you remember? Similar. Was there a hurricane talk like this, or a Skywarn, or was I doing it? Do you remember? Or? No. Oh, that definitely wasn't me. That definitely. that is a good one. That is a good one. We are with the federal government, so you know you gotta. You did your taxes this year, right? But really appreciate everybody joining us. I like to ask that question because sometimes we'll tailor the class depending on how many, if a lot of you have been here, then we might go a different direction. And for a lot of you that haven't been here, we'll go in a separate direction. You're cracking me up with that. Just a little housekeeping. As you came in, there's some brochures that you may or may not have seen, and there's some more up here. Definitely want to point out a couple of them. We don't have a lot of these, so certainly take one, but one per family. These are new this year. It's from North Carolina Emergency Management. These are hurricane guides. Very, very good information. That's something I would definitely take. The other one are those raindrop magnets at the back. Want you to take those because that has all our information on it, our website and social media, and we're going to be referencing that quite a bit. It's a magnet, just throw it on your fridge, or if you've got the stainless steel ones, maybe on the side of the fridge, and you'll be good to go. So I think we're ready to get started. Are you good on your end, or? Oh, we're live. All right, very good. I appreciate everybody joining us this morning. My name is Eric Hayden. I'm a meteorologist with the local Weather Service office down the road in Newport. We'll talk about that in a second. We have Miss Olivia over here. She is a new employee with us. She's been here about 2 months or so. And Mr. Zach was a Holling student, this prestigious internship program with us last year, but it was virtual with everything going on. So Zach is going into grad school at NC State this year. So he took the trip down from Raleigh to see us the last couple of days. So really appreciate you joining us. This talk is going to go over hurricane preparedness. We're going to give you a lot of information, but I really want to focus on a couple things, and that's the impacts of the storm. We really are trying to get people away from the category 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We'll talk about why that is. And water is the biggest emphasis. That is what usually kills people. 80 to 90% of deaths in tropical systems are usually water related. So we're going to talk about all that. One thing I want to mention before we get started, this is a beautiful facility. Really appreciate the town of Emerald Isle for having us out. So you have TVs all around you if you're not familiar with this building, so you should be able to see quite easily. The other thing I want to mention is this is a short presentation, but this is supposed to be a forum. So if you have any questions, raise your hand. At the end, we're going to have a discussion. This is a back and forth. Really want a lot of open discussion so that we all learn, because a lot of times we'll learn from the audience just as much as you'll learn from us in terms of hurricane preparedness. A little bit about our office. We are down the road in Newport off of Highway 70. We cover that whole area in yellow. So places like Greenville and Jacksonville, but also out to 20 nautical miles in the ocean. So if you've been to the beach, if you've been out on a boat, we cover those areas as well. The rest of the state is covered by Raleigh, Wilmington, and the Richmond or Wakefield office. We are open 24/7. This is a picture of us during Florence. So much like first responders, police, hospital, fire, we are there 24/7 no matter what. Our staffing changes. If you come visit us tonight, there's just 2 of us. If you visit us during Florence, we're all there. It's one of the higher locations in Carteret County. It's a brick building reinforced with hurricane shutters. We've got generator power, so we stay no matter what. So during Florence, we are there throughout the storm itself, and we break that shift up into 3 different ones, a day, an evening, and an overnight, so that we cover all those shifts. This is an important slide. I joked around with the gentleman earlier this morning. We're part of the federal government. We fall under the Department of Commerce and NOAA, and we're the National Weather Service. You've already paid for us. Your tax money, hard at work. This is your website. If it's the weather you love, this is our joke. If it's the weather you love, it's weather.gov. We want you to remember that, because all jokes aside, you've paid for this website. There's no advertising on it. There's a lot of really good information, and we're down the road in Newport. You're very, very lucky. There's over 100 offices in the country for the Weather Service, and we're really lucky we have one right here in Carteret County. If you go to weather.gov, you can click on the map and you can click on Eastern North Carolina, or you can use the QR code that some of you are doing now, or you can put the / Morehead City. If you don't have a pen, you don't have your phone with you, oh, I really want to remember this website, magnet. So make sure you grab a magnet on the way out, and that will give you that website information. And the reason why I'm mentioning this is the men and women down the road from you are making a local forecast. So whether you're heading to the beach and you want to know the rip current forecast, you want to know the water temperature, the tides, anything, it's local. We're right down the road from you. You just click on the map or enter your city or zip code, and you can get a localized forecast. If you go to just weather.gov and you're going to Myrtle Beach this weekend, you can click on that area and you'll get the forecast from Wilmington, that local office. So it's really, really good information. There's a lot of information on this website. I always encourage people to bookmark it and play around a little bit with it because it is pretty in-depth. And if you've got any questions, I can certainly answer those for you afterwards. On the website, one pretty neat feature are weather briefings. If you scroll to the bottom, there's a lot of icons, different types of forecasts, but one is a weather briefing. We only do these when there's active weather. So the ice storm we had this past winter, certainly Hurricane Florence and Dorian, any big severe weather outbreak, we will put together a briefing. This is what the town gets, a version of this, and you can get this as a community member as well. So if you go today, you're not going to see anything because luckily we don't expect any crazy weather for at least the next week. But if you go, with a landfalling storm or anything like that, you will find access to that briefing. Just a show of hands, how many are on any type of social media? Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube. We really like social media for waving our hands and saying, this is what you need to pay attention to. Our website is really good. Highly encourage you to use it, but it can be information overload sometimes. It's a little overwhelming. Social media, that's where that steps in for us. And this is where we say, this is what you need to pay attention to. With all these beautiful TVs, again, I can't get over this room. This is great for the town of Emerald Isle. I'm used to very good things behind me, but I've got it all around me. Look at that tweet that I did the morning of Hurricane Florence. Category of the storm is only related to wind. It does not tell you about all the impacts with a hurricane like Florence. Our impacts have not changed. We still expect storm surge and catastrophic flooding. The reason we did that tweet was I would get calls from the community. Should I come back to the area? Florence is just a 1 now. I would get calls from the media. Oh, it looks like we're going to escape the storm. It's not going to be as bad as we thought. That's where we hop onto social media. We wave our hands and say, no, no, no. It's still going to be really bad. So follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and it'll vary how we do things. On YouTube, we'll put a recording like this on our YouTube channel. We'll have recordings more in depth. When there's storms, we record our briefings and we put that on YouTube. So it just varies on the channel how we do things. That is also on the magnet, so please, please, please grab that magnet on your way out. A show of hands before we get to hurricane season. How many have lived here more than 10 years? So a decent amount. How many have lived here less than 5? So about 50-50, right? I've been in this position for 6 years, and I didn't realize how much turnover we had in and out or staying in the area, new to the area, until I started doing talks like this. So for you that have been here a long time, you're going to be nodding your head. You're going to say, I know this, I know this. And there's going to be some things you didn't know. Share that with your new neighbor from Ohio or New Jersey or New York. Share that with your neighbors that aren't here today. Share the recording that the town does. Very important information. This is a learning experience for a lot of us who are new to the area. There's going to be a ton of new information. Ask your more experienced residents questions. And for you more experienced residents, please focus on the part where I say, do not make your decisions just based on category. Because I'm talking to you, especially experienced folks. They say, oh, I'm not going to leave unless it's at least a Cat 3. We'll get to that in a second. So the time to prepare for hurricane season is now. You might say, well, it certainly is, Eric. It's well into August. I would say the same thing in May or June. We have a really long season here. And this graphic shows the frequency of hurricanes and tropical storms. Hurricanes and tropical storms are in red, and the yellow indicates hurricanes. So it peaks around September 10th. A couple things to notice on this graphic. We've had storms as early as May. A couple years ago, we had Tropical Storm Arthur. So we have a real long season. They traditionally peak mid-August through the middle part of September. I still will never, ever forget doing a talk like this in mid to late August 2018. A gentleman talked to me and said, wow, it looks like we're going to make it through hurricane season. I said, shh, don't say anything. We're not even at the peak. And I've already heard it in the community. Wow, it looks like it's not going to be an active hurricane season. And the old timers, you're shaking your head, you understand this. But for you new folks, we are not even close to where the peak is. And that's not to scare you, but that's to say, hey, the clock is ticking. If you haven't gotten your hurricane kit and your preparations, now's the time. We're really running out of time for that. But we've had storms as late as October with Matthew and Sandy. So it is a long season here. Anytime from May well into fall, we can be hit. What can you take out of this? You have a long season to prepare for. So that's something to consider, that, please remind folks that peak is not until mid-September. Really should start your preparation in spring. If you haven't done it yet, it's not too late. We still have a lot of season to get through. So all right, Eric, the season's real long, but do we really get many storms here? I just moved down to the area. I wasn't here for Florence or Dorian or Matthew or Irene, so I don't have an experience. We are the most frequently impacted stretch of coastline in the entire United States. Again, we are the most frequently impacted coastline in the entire United States. So yes, we get a lot of storms here in eastern North Carolina. So on average, every 5 to 7 years. So right up there with southern Florida, and I know the last couple of years has been quite busy in the Gulf Coast, but traditionally we're the most active part of the coastline in the country. So it's a long season. We get hit a lot. What can we do about that? We have no control over if a storm hits us or not. We don't have any control over how active a season is, but we have control over how we prepare for the season and plan for the hurricanes. And the first step for that is to determine your risk. What is your risk level for the storm? And what I'm talking about is not just weather, but also family. It's certainly weather. Are you in a low-lying area by the ocean or on Bogue Sound? Are you in a vulnerable location to wind? But what's your home life? Do you have somebody that maybe is on oxygen and would be really bad off without electricity? Someone like myself, 3 young kids, a wife, an older cat. If they evacuate to a hotel, it has to be pet friendly. That's my consideration. Young person, no dependents, you're healthy. Maybe you don't have as much to worry about. You can up and leave. So your vulnerability is not just weather dependent, it's also family dependent. What is in your family structure that you would have to worry about? With our website, if you add hurricane prep on there, there's a lot of really good information. How to make your kit, know your zone. In North Carolina, they have an initiative for evacuations. It's based on zones, and we do that here in Carteret County. All that information is on that website. So weather.gov/moreheadcity /hurricane prep. And you can also just do the QR code as well. I'm going to advance the slide, but don't worry, the website hasn't changed and the QR code is the same. So first step, determine your vulnerability. Second step is to make that kit. We always stress before bare minimum 3 days. Really pushing people to get out to a week. We saw that with Florence, especially some parts of our community, down east community, some more vulnerable locations. It took longer to get back power and things like that. So aim for a week. Things that you would need to survive without electricity. So non-perishable food, water, medicine. If you have pets, don't forget about them. And one thing that was brought up from the town of Beaufort, actually, the fire chief, Ray over there, and this is why we do these forums, because we're presenting to you, but we want to hear from you. He brought up a pretty good point that somebody in his community said, hey, I can't get all that stuff this weekend. I don't have the money to buy all that stuff for a week this weekend. Spread it out. Get a little bit each week when you do your grocery shopping. This week it's water. Next week you get some canned goods and you spread it out May, June, July, August. And a little bit with each grocery bill, then you can do it. And again, for those that have lived here, and I know the others can imagine this, you go to Food Line and Publix on the island now, plenty of water, right? Much water as you want to get. As soon as we get that first storm that's anywhere in the vicinity of this area, it's going to be difficult to get that kind of thing. So get your case of water this week, and it's just not a problem. So plan ahead, and again, remember your whole family, pets, who's with you, and what you would need for at least a week. It's all on that website if you want a checklist. Some things I didn't cover, like cash on hand, getting your documents ready, that's all on that website. Last step of the three-part plan, determine your vulnerability, make a plan, and your last step is where would you go if you had to evacuate? Have that as a plan. Do not have the plan that I'm staying no matter what. You have to have a plan to leave if the storm is really going to be bad. So my plan before was plan A was up in Maryland where I grew up. That's where my parents lived. Plan B was we have a lot of relatives in South Carolina. And plan C was probably somewhere in the mountains. Well, my plan A is gone. My parents are now down here in Swansboro as of last week. So if I have bags under my eyes, that's from moving over the last week. So my plan A is gone, so I have to think of a different plan. And you want to think about this today. It's a beautiful day today. Have the conversation with your family. Where would we go? We have pets. What hotels take animals? So that when the storm gets here, it's highly stressed. You have a million thoughts through your head. You don't want to have to think about where am I going to go. You just say, hey, our plan is to go here, and we're going to do it because the storm is bad enough we think we need to leave. You don't have to do this alone. On that website, again, know your zone. There'll be different zones, and it'll show your vulnerability. And if you're in a more vulnerable location, you should have a really good plan to evacuate if need be. So before we get to the part about food, because I always like talking about food, any questions, any experiences, those that have lived here for a while, since we are recording this and streaming this on Facebook Live and some other locations, if you do want to say something, I'll make sure you have got the mic. But any of you that have lived here for a while and wish you had done something different, maybe made a longer kit, you ran out of supplies, maybe you would have left in Florence. Maybe you would do something different. Anybody willing to share? You don't have to. Any questions from the new folks? Something I didn't cover in terms of plan, evacuation. And I was shy as much as I like talking now about the weather. I never ask questions in front of people. At the end, the three of us will be here. We're not rushed. So you just come up to us and ask. But anybody want to say anything? Experienced folks or? Yes.
Excuse me.
Yes.
We did something that we are glad we did do. My son-in-law one time said, you guys are vulnerable to hurricanes, you ought to have a little generator there, and we don't have any generator, but he said, I've been watching one at Walmart, it's only $300, and you ought to pick that. We happened to be in Atlanta at the time, where he lived in Atlanta. He said, you ought to pick that up and take it with you, and if you end up not using it, turn it in at Walmart and get your money back. And I said, well, that's a good idea, so I got that. And he said, and on your way out, you're going to go right by our lake house, get one of those little window air conditioners, and if you have the generator and a little window air conditioner, you're going to be pretty well off. So anyway, we ended up going home with a window air conditioner and a little generator. And I also got 6 5-gallon gas tanks while I was in Atlanta. They were almost out of gas tanks in Atlanta at that time, and I filled them all with gas. So I had 30 gallons of gas and these two things I just mentioned. And we couldn't get back on the island any sooner than anyone else, but as soon as we could, there still was no power on our street for 6 or 8 days. And so I cranked up my little generator, which ran like a top one, ran all day long with less than 5 gallons. I plugged in my little air conditioner in the bedroom door. I put a little slot there, and I plugged in my lights and my computer and all of that, and there we were. We were fine with those 2 little things and a little bit of gas. So.
That's a really good tip. A lot of folks have invested in a generator, and we're spoiled. I think a lot of us have air conditioning. When you don't have it, you don't have to have it, but it certainly is a luxury to have when you're dealing with storm cleanup and things like that. Yeah. Very good.
Good point. We live on the Sound. If we have to do it again, we'll build a higher house. But the worst flooding we've had were with the lower ranked hurricanes, Ophelia, and the last one, Florence. And the reason is they moved so slowly and they stalled over here. So we went through 4 or 5 high tide cycles. And this is when we got like 4 feet of ocean in the house. Now, we've designed floodgates, aluminum, and I screw them on the 2 doors down. And if it's not major with the Florence, it went above 4 feet. But usually if it's like 1 or 2 feet, it keeps the water out.
So for those at home, I really want to make sure you heard that gentleman's point, and thank you so much. And this is what it's all about with these forums. It's not me talking to you. We're talking as a community. I live here. The gentleman said some of the worst flooding we've had from storm surge was from lower ranked storms. And a lot of you may or may not remember, it doesn't get the notoriety, but Ophelia was a really bad one here. And Florence, people remember because it was just a couple years ago, that was just a one. And we're going to get to that in a second. So thank you so much to reemphasize that point. Very, very good. So we're going to move on to forecasting. We're going to go over some products that we have. The thing I want you to focus on is the graphic on the right. Produced by the men and women down at the Hurricane Center, part of the Weather Service down in Miami, Florida. They are looking at everything. The latest models, the latest trends, 175 years of experience. The graphic on the left, some of you might be familiar with, a spaghetti model. It shows all the different scenarios that could happen. That doesn't help us because you always focus on the one that hits us and all the other ones don't, or we're looking at that. So you don't need to look at anything. And this is where I get on my soapbox about social media and things like that. People share stuff 2 weeks out about storms that haven't even been named. That doesn't help you. It gets our community very anxious, especially when we've just been through a storm. Focus on the official sources of information. We're looking at all of that, and we're letting you know about it as soon as you need to know about it. So focus on the official sources of information. You might say, well, Eric, you have to say that. You're with the Weather Service. Why would I say something different? So I'll give you some facts. A show of hands, I know we had some folks over 10 years. Were any of you here in 99 for Floyd, Hurricane Floyd? So we got a fair amount. So in 1999, our average error for the center of the storm 3 days out was really, really wide. And that's what's shown by the huge circle. Back in 1999, I would say the center of Floyd 3 days out could hit anywhere from the coast of Georgia up through southeast Virginia. Flip forward to just a couple years ago with Hurricane Dorian in 2019, that error has decreased to where 3 days out, I would say, the storm center would hit somewhere over southeast North Carolina. So the track forecasting from the Hurricane Center has gotten really, really, really good. Can there be wobbles? Yes. Do we still struggle with intensity? Yes. So there are still things we're improving, but as far as the track goes, it's pretty good. So please focus on the official sources. We're looking at everything. And the reason why I say that is if you look at just models from run to run is what we call it, it'll change. Charleston, Wilmington, Cape Hatteras, where it's going to hit. How does that help you plan if it's jumping all over the place? I can't tell the town, oh, it might hit Georgia. No, it's going to hit us. No, it's back to Georgia. We have to be consistent. Not only is it important to have an accurate forecast, it has to be a consistent one so that you can do your plans. And the Hurricane Center has the most consistent and accurate forecast, so we really want us to focus on that. And that's where you can help us in the community. Share this stuff, not the spaghetti models that are 2 weeks out saying we're going to get a storm that won't happen. So where can you get these resources? Again, the QR code or hurricanes.gov, that'll send you to the Hurricane Center website. It's on ours as well, but probably easier just to get it from them. This is a really good product. This is one that's still showing something, right, off the coast of Africa, like a 30, 40, 50% chance. So this is called the Tropical Weather Outlook. It's issued 4 times a day. This is your 30-second. You wake up in the morning. Is there anything to watch? And it'll highlight low, medium, or high chance of something forming. And right now there's a little something off the coast of Africa. I think there's 40% chance. Dropped to 30, so that's good news. So 30% chance something will form out there in the next 5 days. Doesn't mean you got to, get your hurricane plan enacted. It's just, hey, before it even gets a name, I want to pay attention. It's on the website, hurricanes.gov. And again, as I scroll through these, don't worry, the QR code is the same. It's the same website, hurricanes.gov. The one you're more familiar with is this, the hurricane forecast cone. You've seen it on the Weather Channel. You've seen it on local news. You have definitely seen this. I mentioned we're becoming more accurate, so that cone is getting more narrow. It is not based on the current storm. So it won't be like a really wide path if it's a big storm and a narrow one. It's all statistics. It's based on how much we've improved. So it's really narrow the next couple days, and as you get farther out, it gets wider because statistically the error is larger. So you're familiar with this, but I want to emphasize that it is only shows the most probable path for the center of the storm. It does not show the impacts, and impacts can occur hundreds of miles away. So for example, this is Florence. We're in the cone of uncertainty is what it's called. It doesn't mean folks in Georgia or southern South Carolina don't have to worry about it. It's not a, I'm in the cone, I have to worry. I'm out, I don't have to worry. It just shows where the center of the storm will go. Does that make sense? And a hurricane's not a dot on a map. Just because the center hits Wilmington doesn't mean we don't see impacts. So if you're anywhere in the vicinity of this, you should be paying attention. A couple other graphics that may not get as much use, but they can help for your planning. This is called the earliest reasonable arrival of tropical storm force winds. You can get it on our website. You can get it in our briefings. You can get it on the Hurricane Center. It sounds crazy, but in layman's terms, it is in a worst case scenario, if you're done your evacuation, if you're done your boarding up, if you're done whatever you need to do by this time, you're fine. So if you want to know, like, when do I have to get all my stuff done, this is what this graphic is. So this is an example, by Wednesday evening, this is with Hurricane Florence. It's from one of our briefings. So for me, 12, 14-hour days, the kids are gone, they're out of state, I'm running home before I have, no more daylight to try to get whatever I need done around the house by this time, and you're good to go. So this is called the earliest time of arrival. The sister to that is most likely, well, when is it actually going to happen? This is an example from Tropical Storm Arthur a couple years ago. In this case, sometime on Monday morning is when we actually expect the winds to pick up. Tropical storm force is about where it becomes unsafe to be out and the winds start to ramp up. That's why we use those thresholds. All right, so that was kind of the homework. Our website, weather.gov. /hurricaneprep, you can have, how to make your kit and things like that. This is a part I really want you to pay attention to. Our website, I want you to know, but like this gentleman here in the middle said, some of our biggest events in terms of water and on the sound, it could be elsewhere, were with lower ranked storms. He specifically mentioned Ophelia and Florence. So this is the Saffir Simpson scale. We're probably all familiar with this, Cat 1 to 5. Did you know that this is only based on wind? So this scale ranks hurricanes based on wind only. It does not say how long it's going to stay over you. It doesn't say how large the storm is. It doesn't say that you're going to have 20 to 30 inches of rain. It doesn't say what side of the storm you're going to be hit by. It says nothing of that, and those are all important things. So when you look at this scale, please do not make your decisions just based on that. And what I mean by that is, I hear it all the time, I'm not gonna leave unless it's at least a 2. I'm not gonna leave at least it's a 3. And we really don't want folks focusing on just a category because, as we've seen, you can have wind and surge issues that have nothing to do with the category itself. So please do not pay attention to just the category of the storm. That's probably the biggest misconception whenever we get interviews from newspapers or anytime I get to speak. I say that's the #1 misconception, that you should or shouldn't leave based on the category. Was I scared when Florence was a 4 and I live in Cape Carteret, 3 miles as a crow flies to the waterfront? Was I worried it was a 4? Yes. It's to be respected, but it's only part of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing. So that's what we're going to go into next. It's really all about the impacts. From 2010 to 2019, we had a lot of just ones. Do you remember Irene, Sandy, Matthew, Florence, Dorian? Lots of just ones. So the next time a newer resident comes, or even a more experienced one, and say, oh, it's just a one, don't worry about it. How much rain are we going to get? How many days is it going to sit here? Is it hitting down toward Jacksonville or Wilmington and we're on the right side of the storm? Is it a really large storm? So there are other factors that go into it, and it's really about all the impacts. And it's not something that you have to decide in terms of, hey, I've got to make all these decisions. That's what's going to be in our briefings. That's what's going to be in the forecast. That's what they're going to be saying on the news. They're going to be saying 20 to 30 inches of rain like we had with Florence. It's not something hidden that you're going to have to look for. You'll certainly have access to that information. So water, water, water is the issue on this graphic from 1963 to 2012. 90% of the deaths were water related. About half storm surge, a third was rain, and then rip currents, surf, things like that. So 90% of our issues from the 60s to 2012 were water related. Doesn't show up in the category. Wind, less than 10%. Can a tree fall in your car or your house and you die? Yes. Is it to be respected? Yes. Is it going to cause issues with your roof and insurance claims? Yes. But in terms of what's going to kill you, it's water, water, water. You might say, well, Eric, last time I checked, 2012 was 10 years ago. Do you have newer statistics? We do. So through last hurricane season, still a lot of water, water, water. Almost 70% freshwater flooding. That's driving through flooded roads, water coming up. We've made a lot of improvements with storm surge. That's with watches and warnings and a lot of emphasis on that. But water is still the biggest factor with deaths. One thing we don't have on here, we're going to talk about at the end. We're talking about all before the storm. There are also issues after. Carbon monoxide poisoning, falling off of ladders, coming back too early and crossing flooded roads. So there's also factors on the back end as well. So as we end our presentation, we're going to focus on those impacts. Rainfall, storm surge, rip currents, wind, and tornadoes. Those are the 5 impacts you can get with any tropical system. It could be a depression. It could be a tropical storm. It might not even have a category name. If we have a tropical storm and we get 20 inches of rain, which is possible, that's going to cause a problem. So that's what we want to emphasize. If you weren't here in Florence, and with all these TVs, you can definitely see the numbers on this. So we're near that white in eastern Onslow County, so 20 to 30 inches of rain in the Crystal Coast. Tremendous amount of rain in a 4-day period that produced flooding in our area. We have sandy soil. We're flat, so we don't traditionally get a ton of freshwater flooding like this, but we can when you have those rainfall amounts, especially on some of the roads and low spots. But that also causes our rivers to come up. So we don't have rivers here on the island, but as you evacuate inland or come back, you drive Highway 70 through Kinston, the Neuse River, some of those rivers come up. And the issue is they don't just come up and come down. Since we're kind of at the end of the system, down toward the ocean, they take weeks to recede. So it can cause a problem for a long, long time. So heavy rain can certainly bring flash flooding, but it can also bring river flooding. And the biggest thing for you to know about that is it's unlikely that the water's just going to come up and you're in your home and you don't know about it. You have probably seen the pictures from Kentucky. They have topography, mountains, and they have a clay soil. So for here, it's hard for the water to come up really quick. It can happen, but what more is likely is you're going to have flooding on Highway 58 or on the island in low spots and it's deep, and you say, I don't want to turn around, I just want to drive through that. I've got a big pickup truck, 4-wheel drive, I'm tired, my truck is all up high, I can get through that, no problem. That's the problem you're going to come into. You're going to see this water and say, wow, I didn't realize it only takes 1.5 feet to sweep my car away. Or wow, I didn't realize the road wasn't there anymore because it was scoured out. So it's not to scare you, and you're not going to be in your home more than likely. It just comes up like the folks in Kentucky. If you're traveling, worry about that kind of stuff. But around here, you're going through areas you shouldn't have done. You're going through areas that are already barricaded, and you decide to drive around it. More than half of the deaths are in vehicles. So these are preventable deaths. It's not that they're caught off guard. So the campaign with that is turn around, don't drown. don't cross flooded roads, don't go around barricades. I think it was 16 of our 17 deaths in Florence, direct deaths, were water related. They were in vehicles. Those are preventable deaths. You know, you get a bad storm like this, you're going to have, you know, issues that are just out of your control. That is totally in your control and something you can avoid. Storm surge, certainly an issue along our coast. For the Crystal Coast, we can get it a couple ways. We can get it ocean side, but we can also get it sound side. Not quite as dramatic as they have like on the Pamlico Sound and the Outer Banks, but we can certainly get it depending on the wind direction and the intensity of the storm. A lot of factors into storm surge, how large the storm is, where it hits. Does it hit at high tide? Does it sit over you and you have multiple tide cycles? So storm surge is a rapid rise of water ahead of the storm. This can cause a huge water level increase quickly, like the snap of a finger. We saw that on Ocracoke. I mentioned our YouTube channel. If you go on our YouTube channel and click on videos, we have video in the lower left of the water rise in Ocracoke, 4 to 7 feet in 15 minutes. So we're going to see, you know, rapid water level rises. It's from storm surge. If you've been in downtown New Bern, that was inundated with 8 to 11 feet of storm surge. You might say, wow, they're 45 minutes inland, but it can funnel up the Neuse River off the Pamlico. So around here, Bogue Sound, depending on where you are, on the back side of storms, we can get it. And then ocean side, we can get it on the front side. So we kind of get it both ways here in the Crystal Coast. To plan for that and why we've had so little deaths, we were a test office many years ago, but we issue storm surge watches and warnings for storm surge. And we also, once we get closer, we'll do this map that will show you areas that can be inundated and how high the water can be. This is a reasonable worst case scenario. Not everyone will see this, but it's for community planners to plan evacuations. And this is, you may have heard a term recently, above normally dry ground. A lot of people say, what is that? You know, we used to do mean low water or mean high water. What it means is if you live in a low-lying area along the Sound or the ocean, and you're usually on dry ground and you're close to the adjacent water, it can be 2, 3, 4, 6 feet high in that area. It has no datum reference. It's not referencing sea level or low water. It's just those low-lying areas along the Sound. Water can get that high, and we certainly saw that with Florence in 2018. So water, flooding, river flooding, storm surge. Rip currents, big deal with tropical cyclones. And this is well before, well after, or well away from. You might say, what are you talking about? Picture this, you're from the Northeast, you just spent the big money for the beach house here. You got a whole week, right? The storm is not going to get here until this weekend. You're going to go to the beach. It's sunny. It's nice out. The hurricane's not hitting until later this week. Well ahead of these storms, we have large swell, and we can have issues. Even though it's clear blue skies, if the red flags are flying, you should not be in the water swimming. Well, after the storm, the water's still choppy and not a good place to be. Or the other example, probably the scariest example, in my opinion, is the storms that are well away from our area. Does anybody remember Hurricane Lorenzo in 2019? That's what I thought. Nobody, right? It was 2,000 miles away, a strong Category 5 storm, way out there. We lost more lives on our North Carolina coastline because of Lorenzo than Dorian. Again, we lost more people in eastern North Carolina on the coast in Lorenzo than Dorian. 2,000 miles away. Strong swell, October, beautiful stretch of weather, 80s and sunny, and people went to the beach and didn't realize, maybe they didn't see the flags flying. It was well, advertised, but they didn't know. It's not a thunderstorm and hey, I better go inside. So rip currents can be certainly a big deal. We have beautiful beaches here, and we have awesome lifeguards. So our first rule with swimming in our area is swim at a lifeguarded beach. There's not really a reason not to, because we have them here. Know how to swim if you're going to go in the water. Swim left or right or parallel to get out of a rip current. Whenever we do school talks, a lot of the kids know that, the training And the education in the community has been really good. But this is where you need to share it with your new neighbor that hasn't lived into the area and tell them that the rip current doesn't pull you under, it pulls you out. And your natural inclination is to fight it. Mom and dad are saying, hey, getting too far out, and you fight it, and that's where you have a difficulty. But if you were to just go to the right, or you just go to the left, it's a very narrow stream, it's a break in the sandbar, then you can just easily come in. It's not a flotation device, but my kids always have a boogie board. They know what to do, right? But when something happens and all of a sudden you can't stand anymore, you panic. You don't remember that you can swim. You don't remember that dad said go left or right. But if you have that boogie board and you can just take a deep breath, what did dad say over and over again, left or right? You can help folks. If they're in trouble, direct them. You don't need to go in after them. Tell them where to go. Get a lifeguard. Call 911. So you can certainly help by directing them where to go. So we talked a lot about water. Now we're going to get into the wind part. Does anybody recognize the picture in the upper right? You all should. So that's Bogue Inlet Pier. That's where we're going to go after this talk. They haven't been there yet, so we're definitely going to check that out. Beautiful pier. So the reason why we show that one, that is an EF2 tornado that went through Salty Pirate and the park over there in 2019. Those were the first bands of rain and storms that moved on shore. So tornadoes can occur with any tropical system. Doesn't have to be a huge hurricane, and often it's kind of on the outer edges. So it's not, hey, landfall was the next day, but we had the tornado the day before. So they can occur early in the storm, and they can occur well away from it. So the landfall for Florence was down by Wrightsville Beach, Wilmington, but they had tornadoes up in Richmond days later. And it's because the thing's spinning. It's not hard to imagine it can spin up tornadoes. It's already churning and around. So we point this out not to scare you, because at this point in the talk I say, wow, there's so many things you got to think of. If you decide to stay, and it's a tropical storm, and we're going to get a couple inches of rain and 40-mile-per-hour winds, not going to be a big deal, right? Make sure you have a weather radio. Make sure your cell phone's on and the notifications aren't turned off, and be ready for tornadoes so that you seek shelter in your lowest level away from windows. Just be ready for that, because that is something that can occur with any tropical system. We are going to end with these slides. Does anybody remember Hurricane Arthur in 2014? Not the tropical storm a couple years ago, but Arthur 2014? No? Are you sure? It was a Category 2 storm hit by Cape Lookout. We had, Beaufort measured almost a 90-mile-per-hour wind gust, but most of the issue was over toward the Outer Banks. It was a fast-moving storm, a small storm, and it hit around Cape Lookout. You sure you don't remember? Hurricane Arthur. All right. Do you remember Hurricane Irene? Are you sure? It was just a 1. Irene was just a 1. Arthur was a 2, though. So Irene, of course you remember it. It was a large storm, slow moving, lots of wind over the whole area, and it was just a 1. We put those slides on here to reemphasize it's not just all about the category. You don't remember Arthur? It was a 2, hit at the same place because it was small and fast moving. You remember Irene because it was large and it was slow moving, and we had a lot more issues in our area. So we end with that one. Wind is important. It's something to pay attention to, but it's just part of the puzzle. It's not the whole thing. I end the talk with the hurricane outlook. So it was updated August 4th, so this is hot off the presses. You probably already saw it in the news. The one little change is the above normal prediction was 70, or I think it's 70%. Now it's down to 60%. Still pretty likely that we're going to have a really active year, and we still have a long season to get through. The reason why I spend about 30 seconds on this is it's a very accurate forecast. It's probably going to be right, but it doesn't matter, because it only takes one storm to make an impact on us. We could predict the least active year on record, but if we get that 1 or 2 storms in our area, it's a big deal. So I always practice what we preach. What can you actually do tangible that's going to make an impact on your life? Share this information. Start working on your hurricane kit. look at your risk. Like this gentleman was maybe half joking about building higher, but you are where you are. You are where you are building wise, right? You can make minor modifications, but you have control over your kit. You have control over where you're going to go to evacuate. You have control over telling that family that just moved in, hey, rip currents are a big deal here. Our beaches are awesome. They're nothing to be afraid of. It's just something that naturally occurs. This is how you get out of them. You have control over that. Don't make your decisions based on categories. And don't forget about after the storm. I mentioned this before. We have had some issues with carbon monoxide deaths, people using generators in a garage, in an enclosed structure, getting up on a ladder and trying to repair a roof and falling off. So I'm a big sports fan. Don't go through all this preparation and lose it the last inning of the game or the minute of the game, however you want to say it. You've done all this stuff. Don't drive through a flooded road to get back here. Make sure you know how to use a generator if you're using it. Don't get into spots that you shouldn't be safety-wise. So for the virtual audience and in-person audience, that's my email. If you got any questions, hey, this website you said is great. I can't figure something out. You mentioned something I want to know more about. Just send me an email. We do a lot of these talks. I really appreciate the town having us. We're going to be here again because this facility is fantastic. We do smaller groups. We were just over at Parks and Rec. They have summer camps all year. You might have seen some pictures, might have seen us playing a little basketball with the kids. We try to have fun too. We did a talk with them. We do school visits. Without you, we're not in the community educating. So let us know how we can help the community, and we'll certainly do that. On your way out, please grab any brochures. I mentioned the hurricane guide and the magnets. For those watching online, shoot me an email. We can hook up. I live in the community. Hey, I really want one of those hurricane guides, but I couldn't make it out today. Just shoot me an email. We'll make sure you get that those resources. You're welcome to head out, but before we leave, for those want ask any questions or share any more stories, I'd be curious. What you might have learned that you didn't know. Go ahead. Yep.
Eric, if it's okay,
sure.
on behalf of the town of Emerald Isle, our board members, our commissioners, we want to thank you for being here. Sure. We wanted to take this opportunity also to remind our property owners and our residents about our reentry permit process, if that's okay. So the time to plan for that reentry permit process is now. You must provide ownership or residency, proof of residency, and those permits are permanent. So if you already have your yellow permit, it's okay. You don't need to reestablish them. But we want to make sure that if you want to re-enter the island under these conditions of after or immediately following evacuation, it protects not just you, but your neighbors too, so that there aren't others on the island when your property is vacant. So we'd encourage you to come by the police department. We've expanded that process for all of our residents and property owners. The PD is open 7 days a week, and you can come in and procure your reentry permit. Permits are $25 each, and all businesses, long-term renters, and or property owners will be issued up to your 2 yellow permits for your property that you may need. If there's extenuating circumstances, you can just speak to our staff and we'll try to help you with that. But again, you'll need this to re-enter the island under an evacuation situation. So if you do have any questions, either myself, my name is Matt, our assistant chiefs here, our team members from the PD, our customer service reps are available to help anyone that's in the building today. So thank you again for being here.
And don't feel rushed with this. This is one part. I'm really, appreciate the building. It's nice and everything. But these forms are a presentation from us. But each town talks about the resources they have. The county has different resources than the town. Cape Carteret has different resources than this town. So that's a great. I'm glad you brought that up. Apologize for not saying something earlier. Any questions? Any comments? Especially for those that have been here. I was just curious, a show of hands, we got a comment in the back before we get to you. A show of hands, before today, raise your hand if you realized the category was only wind dependent, that it didn't take in all those. So some did and a lot didn't, but those that did, that's very good. So comment from the back. Yep.
So can you put your contact information back up?
Yes.
Also, it seems that from all the slides that you've shown us, the best place, if needed to evacuate, would be towards the mountains, rather than up or down the coast. Is
Yes.
that correct?
Farther inland, and as far inland as you can go financially and logistically. And I say that because a lot of people, so the Weather Service we just tell you what the weather is. We don't tell you to evacuate this and that. But Eric, as a community member, a lot of people will go to Raleigh or Greenville and it can get quite full, hotels and things like that. So you need a plan to go elsewhere. And farther inland is usually a better choice because a slight turn to the right or left, you could have issues farther up the coast or farther down. You will have to consider getting back. Getting back can be a challenge for sure with our flooded roads between here and there. And then the reason why I say farther inland is, when a storm hits the coast, it doesn't just stop. We can have, with Fran and other storms, we've had wind damage right up through Raleigh. So you can have power outages and issues inland. You're not going to worry about surge, but you can still have flooding and tornadoes, and you can have wind issues as well. So as far inland as you can get, my plan would be to send the kids to the mountains. But again, I think it's Fred or one of the storms last year. I didn't even remember it because it didn't hit here, but they had devastating flooding out in the western part of our state from a tropical storm. So it's not that they won't get anything. You just want to be as far out of harm's way as possible. Look at the forecast, with Florence, that rain spread pretty far inland. So maybe you have to go north in that example. Just look at the forecast and get away from it as best you can. Yeah, so the contact information is on the lower right, and this is just phenomenal. The technology, I appreciate the town. Again, this is great. I forgot to mention, prior to my 15 years with the Weather Service, I was a broadcast meteorologist for 5 years. So that's why I'm really loving this technology all around. Was there a question in the back? I thought I saw some. Yep. And the reason why we're giving you the mic is we do have a virtual audience, and this will be recorded as well. So folks are going to hear you well with the mic.
And this is just a comment for Emerald Isle. After a hurricane, Emerald Isle was excellent about providing trucks that come and pick up the debris. We had no damage to we lost one shingle in Florence, but it cost us over $2,000 to get the debris that washed in. We are right on the water, to get the debris from our waterfront to the road for the town to pick up. But the town is excellent about picking it up. So they really are.
Yeah. That's a good point. I can't speak to this town. I know in Cape Carteret, just this county, it was just impressive. My son was doing, I think it was like little league soccer over at Fort Benjamin, and just see the piles of stuff for Carteret County, like just amazing how efficient they were picking up the debris. It's just very interesting process. Yes.
I have a comment about tornadoes.
Yes.
Florence, we evacuated to Richmond, Virginia. And what happened in Richmond, Virginia?
Tornadoes.
Tornadoes.
Yes.
Driving in Richmond, Virginia, the phone goes off with a tornado alarm. Seek shelter immediately. We were 5 hours away.
Mm-hmm. Great point. Did you see, we had this one slide showing, and I mentioned Richmond, but I've never had the local aspect of it. Yeah, 5 hours away from land, from here, and well away from landfall, and it can occur well inland. Some of the tornadoes they had, was it 2 years ago in Philadelphia, was and the flooding they had in New York City was, I forget what storm, Ida, it was one of them, I think it was Ida. It made impact on the Gulf Coast, and they had tornadoes up in Philadelphia, and they had flooding in New York City. So any tropical system can produce that. And of course, that was a hurricane, but again, even if it's just a tropical storm, you can get, with Hermine, we had some tornadoes with that. That was a tropical storm. But yeah, sorry you had to go through that as a story, but I appreciate you bringing that up. Anything else? Well, we appreciate it. If you think of any questions, you can certainly email me. I've got my business card. And again, on your way out, please grab one of those magnets. Has all our information if you want to come up and chat. We'll be here as long as you want. So thank you so much for having us.